before it goes off the rails. I'm Adam Harris.
I am Peter Martin.
I can't play the piano today.
You're killing it, man. What are you talking about?
Dude, this has been rough. It's been a rough morning for me playing.
Really?
You ever have those days where you're like, I don't feel like my voice is in the instrument today.
You know what? The weather.
You
We
think
need to
it
do
is?
an episode sometimes about the weather and how it affects us as pianists because we think we're off the hook, that we're not trumpeters
I'm definitely gonna
or
be
trombonists.
I'm definitely gonna be blaming the weather from here on out.
No, I mean, I can feel it. Like, it takes me a while to.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's blaming we can, but it's the adjustments that we need to make
Yeah.
because sometimes they aren't as maybe crucial physically for us as pianists, but they are important. And so I think even more so just kind of getting ready and acknowledging and, as we know from our meditative practices, it's like, oh, it's colder, it's drier.
You're
How do our
very
hands-
gracious here, Peter.
How
I
do our
really I
wrists feel?
appreciate you
No,
giving me
no.
a trapdoor out of this.
Myself included. No, I mean, I feel it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's the fun of like working towards being. I think when people talk about, are you a pro or you're an amateur? I always chafe and Brussels sprouts.
You Brussels.
Shout out
You
Brussels.
Brussels.
As always, shout out Belgium. At that because it's a continuum, right? It's not like you're crossing over a threshold into being a pro. But if there's one part that I do think separates the pros from the amateur,
From the cons.
from pros and the cons, right? Is like your approach to things like these kinds of potential adversities that everybody has. Like, how does the weather affect your hands? How does cold? Whatever is, how do we kind of get ready for that mentally and say we're going to deliver no matter what?
Yeah.
Because that
I mean,
is-
it's going to happen no matter what.
Exactly. That's as much as a mental as a physical challenge. And I think when you see people doing, athletic of things that you're like, oh my God, I could never imagine doing that. A lot of times they're just the same people
Yeah.
as us. Obviously they're in better shape, maybe more talented, but
Are they though?
they've made that mindset shift to like, I'm going to do this no matter what the weather is. And so at least we're doing this indoors, but it is something for us to think about for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a couple of takes there. Just a couple. One that I had to run out of the room from.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was kind of, I know it was cool, but it was something. But today we're talking about, I think, something that can actually be very helpful in these kind of situations. We're talking about adding this to your playing today.
Outer space, right?
We're talking about adding some space to your playing.
Oh, I thought you said outer space.
Outer space.
My outer space.
That's a nice outer space, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. No, so this is something that we've been doing over in Open Studio Pro on Feedback Fridays where, if you're a
If
member of
someone
Open
wanted to
Studio-
become a part of Open Studio Pro, what would they do? Do they need to donate to the Adam Manis Charitable Trust Foundation?
No, they don't need to do that.
What do
All
they
they need to do is click the link here in the description of this video, and you can get on the waiting list for Open Studio Pro. Enrollment is closed most of the time. We only open it up now just every
So
couple
you're saying
of...
we have a closed door policy over at Open
we
Studio
have
Pro?
we have
Except
a,
for members, we have an open door policy.
we have a small engaged community, and so we do want to just keep it small and engaged. But
Right.
our Open Studio Pro members, they have been playing over on Feedback Friday, which is a class we do every Friday.
Feedback Friday's fun.
We have classes every day, but this is a specific class where you can play for the group, you can play for me, get some coaching directly of what you might practice. And I'll tell you what, we've got a lot of good players over there, people that can really play. And one of the things that is my go-to when people are feeling stuck, or I can just hear it in their playing, you've got a lot of language, you can get around on changes, but it's just you're not connecting. There's usually what's happening is overplaying. There's a lot of run-on sentences. There's not very clear ideas between your phrases. And so I thought today, Peter, we could talk about one thing that you can add to your playing today that actually is going to make you sound like 20% better just by applying some principles here. What's that?
Minimum.
No, this will make you sound
Yeah.
a lot better with what you have already. Like, you don't need to go learn a bunch of new language or new chords or new licks or whatever. With what you have, if you apply this principle, you will sound a lot better. And it's a very simple principle in theory, but it's so hard to do in the moment. And that's it, to add space to your playing. And actually, we have examples here from 3 great masters where you can see that they are playing probably more space between their phrases than you are as
Absolutely.
a beginner or intermediate. So what happens is, as a beginner or intermediate, you're often playing like... like when you learn these sort of like bebop language kind of stuff, or even whatever.
Skibba-dooba
Or maybe
bebop.
maybe you learn like pentatonic language.
Make it stop.
Right? You can. There's a point where you get good enough that you can just keep going forever.
Yeah.
And then some people just do. But when you hear great masters like the people we're going to listen to today, you see that it's a lot more short phrases with space in between. And we're going to talk about ways we can practice that.
Absolutely. So this is going to be, I think, kind of a addition by subtraction type of situation, right? You're talking about adding space.
Adding
but
space and practicing space.
Yes. And oftentimes that will mean the reality for a lot of people will mean putting space in the place of where you normally would be, either continuing a phrase or starting your phrase right away, because there's so many different ways to add space, which is what makes it such an exciting and useful concept, but also technique to use, because it's not just about like, okay, make your space longer. For some people, it's literally adding any kind of space.
Any kind of space would be nice. But we have, so let's watch the 3 examples from these 3 masters of space and what that looks like.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I'm going to give you a very like sure, foolproof exercise.
Okay.
To practice putting space between your phrases.
For me or for them or for all of us?
For all of us.
Good. Okay. I've got 3 queued up, and I'm going to let you choose which. I'm going to just lay it out there for the 3. We got Keith Jarrett. Ever heard of him? Let me go full screen. We're going full screen.
Peter, can you go full screen on this, please?
We're going full screen. Full screeno. That would be F. Okay, so we've got Keith Jarrett. We've got Thelonious Monk. Should we go? Let's go Keith Jarrett, because I've got it pulled up here.
Yeah.
This is a little thing, if I should lose you. We're hoping this does not get the channel taken down. We're never sure with Mr. Jarrett, but we hope. So he's coming out of the melody here.
Classic trio, right?
Yes.
Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette.
Jack DeJohnette.
Now listen to the length of phrases. And Keith there's not going to be like total silence between, but he will be holding a lot of notes.
Yes.
And he's going to be playing, especially in the beginning here, and he'll start to elongate the phrases. But even throughout the whole solo, I don't know this solo, but I'm gonna guess.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of moments where there's short phrases, almost like a machine gun, right after one another. So it seems like he's playing a lot, and he is playing a lot, but each phrase has a punctuation to it.
Right. And a relationship to the next part of the phrase.
And so this is where like a lot of intermediate players can go from good to great.
Absolutely. And like you said, a lot of times he's holding the notes, but that does give the separation. And it also sets up a pattern, because when he doesn't hold the notes in between, it's very different. I'm just going to back it up a little bit. Coming out of the melody again. Like hold. Lift.
You can hear all of
Big lift, yeah. Exploring a little bit.
But that silence makes what he plays even more powerful.
And I just want to back it up too, like as he's coming into that second A, I love when he'll leave the space that feels like it's going to be right up until the next A section. These are like 8-bar harmonic phrases.
Yeah.
But then he'll kind of come in with the phrase a little bit earlier. But because he laid out that separation, that space before it, it works, right? Like it's almost like a pickup, and then Jack hits that snare.
Listen to the ends, and
you can kind of feel him and the trio listening too.
You can.
You know?
I mean, this is what I'm saying is there is a musician who's at a certain level, and you never hear them play with this much space because they can now play continuously.
Yeah.
And it takes some work to get back to this.
Right. Absolutely.
Doesn't hurt that what he's playing is amazing.
So by far, that was the longest phrase he's played.
Even in the middle of it, he's still holding a note for 4 beats.
Yeah. I mean, there's a progression with little mini fragments and riffs within that. But it's like you're already at the place in the form and the solo where it feels like almost anticipatory of where things are going.
Yeah.
Still exploratory for sure.
why it's so important to transcribe people, or at least like sing along to albums. Because I remember when the first transcription of Keith Jarrett I did, I realized like he's playing short little phrases, and they're happening faster than I would play next to each other. So he does have big moments of space, but these short little phrases one after the other. You actually do something very similar, Peter. You do short phrases one after the other, and actually you can kind of track this with all the greatest players.
I never knew Keith was stealing from me, but thank you.
Yeah.
Boop, scuba dip it up, go down. Oh man,
so good.
And then, like, so let's just talk a little bit about left hand, because the way Keith Jarrett, I mean, everybody deals with this differently, but there's so much clarity. Like that first whole half of course, I don't even think, it looked like he was playing, but if you listen, he wasn't actually playing anything with the left hand.
Yeah.
So even now as he's putting it, like he's being very judicious in terms of like how much he, kind of jumps into that space with like knowing that when you comp with the left hand, you're not getting in the way, but you're saying something about the spacing, especially because of what he set up so far where he wasn't comping in between. So it becomes a great little dramatic thing, but also like the possibility of like, do you disrupt this? Like, what does it do to the flow? Not disrupt in a bad way, but like now it becomes a thing of like, is it with the snare drum? Is it between the phrases? Is it along with the phrase? So many great possibilities, Like you can almost feel like he's making a decision to not play with the left hand based upon what's happening in the trio. Just a little bit.
So it's so clear here with Keith playing. Let's go on to our next master pianist, so that we can hear more examples of how you might apply some space to your phrases. This is Herbie Hancock. Ever heard of him? Do we have anything new to do? Now, Peter, this is something you've been talking about the last couple months, is Herbie solo on All of You from was it Miles Davis, My Funny Valentine album?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is My Funny Valentine, Herbie Hancock, and this is coming right out of George Coleman's solo.
And this is our transcription from Max Gamise, so we can actually see here.
Yeah. Okay, so this is cool. When you see things, it's really the same things that you're hearing, but it does, I think, put things into perspective, especially with this discussion of space and what are you doing before and after the space. So obviously we've got like this part here, boom, boom, boom. There's space coming out, not a lot though, coming out of the saxophone solo, but check it out. Can I do this here? Like, look at the length of this phrase and just what he's kind of playing. Oh, he's got it. So like, ba-ba-da-da, space, ba-da-da-da-dum, bomb. Like, dum, bump, bump. Like, he's setting up the thing. And this is very much about Tony Williams. Big space. But this is a little bit of a different kind of space. I know this is not traditionally what we talk about space in terms of rest, but this is kind of spaces things by pulling apart the rhythm a little bit, the melodic rhythm.
It's a 4/3 situation here, right?
Yeah. Yep. And then that kind of sets things up. And then, talking about the left hand, so Herbie's doing a little bit more than Keith was doing there, but the way he's playing that, he's honoring like the melodic space, right? And kind of complementing it.
Well, and then in the right hand there on that F minor 7, it doesn't look like there's any space, but the way he's playing that, holding that note out, it decays so rapidly that it is space, but there's not like continuous eighth notes happening.
Yeah, because that's really the end of this phrase.
That's right. Yeah.
This long bo bo do bo ba da 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 ba da da.
Yeah, the ba ba do 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 is almost a response to that phrase.
Yeah. Boom ba da da dum scooby doo doo bip, and then let's just listen to this.
No, you should sing the whole thing.
And then this is kind of using almost like some sort of more like meta syncopation within where the breaks are. Bip doo bip up break, bip up break.
Keep playing, Peter. We're leaving too much space here on our playback.
Get up there. Yeah, and look at that. Well, I mean, I was going to say you can learn everything you need to know about space in the first. So here he's like, bip, do it up, left hand, bip. So check it out. He's jumping in with the left hand very purposefully in between each of the little wrists in the right hand, right? Left hand. Real light.
Yeah, notice that all of the left
But then
hand.
here, nothing in the left for 2 beats. So it's like sometimes when you get in the space and then you get out of it, that explains the space even better, right?
For sure.
And makes it like, because sometimes people be like, man, I learned the notes. How come my stuff doesn't have purpose on a bigger level? It's like, you got to pay attention to these details. You don't have to do it just like Herbie or just like Keith, although you wouldn't be doing a bad thing, Is that something you'd be interested in? But the idea is that you start to see these different possibilities. And so how we talk about addition by subtraction, that's a perfect example. Look at this here. These 2 beats here, buddy. Let's play these over. What do you notice? Just Ron and Tony. No Herbie. Because he's leaving space, right? This is a lot of space. It looks contiguous,
Tons of space.
but it feels spacey.
Dynamically, there's space.
And then look, this is huge space. And then that comes in with the first like overtly blues phrase. So it's like, it's so purpose driven. I love it. And what it does is it opens up the possibilities of what you can do. It's not like you have to do blues. It's like, what do you hear there? You've just you've put some, it's like having a conversation with someone. If you shut the hell up and listen to what they say, and then they get tired of talking, it's actually going to be nice to hear your voice at a certain point. Adam, you should try that in the podcast sometime.
I'll try. I'll give it a shot. I know I'm kind of a blabbermouth.
And there's nothing like using space when you're developing an idea to make it even better.
So good.
Yeah. Oh no, keep talking, please. I didn't mean to get in your head there, buddy.
Oh no, I feel self-conscious about it. Can we check out some of the next artists, and then we'll talk about ways we can
Herbie
practice?
Hancock? Canceled. Okay, let's go on to Monk. No, it's. I mean, this is the thing. We literally could have we did sort of randomly pick.
You can randomly pick any of your favorite artists, and they probably are leaving more space than you are.
It's a part of art.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a part of nature. It's a part. I mean, there's nothing and it's not to say that there aren't times when things are busy.
Yeah, and artists that are busy, and that's their thing. But in general,
but if everything's busy all the time, then nothing's busy.
That's right. Play the space is sort of the
space is the place.
Space is the place.
Coming out of Charlie Rouse, a master.
No, Monk's leaving so much space, he stood up.
That's a good way to leave space in your company. Blue Monk. Patience.
Every phrase has a beginning and an ending, has a punctuation to it. The silence in between where you get to just enjoy the rhythm section makes what Monk plays more powerful.
Yeah.
More with you. It sticks
Absolutely.
with you. It's more memorable.
And I think it's like you even get power of things that were played, previously, right? So the phrases like those great phrases, and then when you have the space, you get a time to enjoy. It's like, yes, you're in the moment, but that's still floating out there as the last notes that were played, and then the bass player, drummer are like complementing that, which may just be like swinging right along or a little bit of a tag or something. It's like it's so commensurate with the amount of space needed to absorb what just happened and what's about to happen. And there's no formula for it, but when you hear it done like this, you start to think maybe there is a formula for it because it seems so mathematically perfect as to what that space, like once you start to analyze it, you're like, oh yeah, he's got to come in right then. And then there he is. He comes in. There's actually a lot of good choices though.
Yeah.
And they're his choices.
And they're good choices.
Because a lot of what's happening here, this is the first, he hasn't played any comping or any chords at all in the solo. So now he's playing 2 notes, the first chord. So that becomes its thing and clutters up in, I think, a good way, in my opinion, but like does clutter up the space a little because now you're getting some vertical collision as everything has been single line. So he's kind of highlighting that. and then using the space on either. You're getting kind of low over there, buddy. You mean?
No, I'm getting prepared to play, man. I
gotcha.
want to give some examples here of how we can work on it. You get the idea, folks. These great players are using these. Their phrases are separated by varying lengths of space.
Yeah.
So how do we practice that?
I like that. You're very purpose driven. Well, I think that your idea I've heard you say, I'd love for you to talk about. There's a bunch of ways to practice it.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just say the first thing, and then you should jump on this. This is a fun thing to practice because it's so simple. Like the biggest part of it is thinking about it before you practice.
That's right.
So like slow down for a second and say, okay, the theme for everything that I'm going to practice today is addition by subtraction of space.
Yeah.
So the idea being like, don't wait until you're playing, Blue Monk at the end of your thing, trying to imitate Thelonious Monk. In your scales, leave some space. Like you're literally leaving space in everything that you do so that it starts to become a habit, so that your ears start to acclimate.
You have to hear yourself doing this.
You have to hear yourself. You have to get comfortable with the silence. You know what I mean?
So the first way we can practice this, Peter, is just let's do a B-flat blues.
Okay.
And I will practice the space if you can accompany me.
Yes,
and
sir.
You can do this on your own as well, but it's we've got two people here, so let's practice it. So the first way you can do this is literally 2 bars on, 2 bars off.
Okay.
Right. So
you're talking about melodically what you'd be playing.
Melodically, so I'm just going to play. So of course, a B-flat blues is 12 bars. So I'm going to fill the first 2 bars of every 4-bar phrase and then leave space the last 2 bars. And this is just an exercise so you can hear yourself doing it. This is the simplest way to do it. And then we'll go to, I think, the most effective way right after this. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It's challenging to put handcuffs on yourself and not be allowed to play in those bars, and you start.
It's like a framework to practice.
It's a framework, but it's good to hear yourself doing it. So that is something that's so easy to do because you could literally be like, I'm just going to 2 bars on and 2 bars off, and you notice I'm not exact with that. It's not. I'm playing over the bar and I'm starting before, and that's all fine. You don't have to be super strict with it. It's more about the intent behind it. Now, the most effective way that I found to give people to do this is what you might call the negative space game. So we'll do a similar B-flat blues, and now the rule is whatever phrase I play, however long that is, I'm going to sing that back in my head, at least rhythmically, and I'm going to make the space between the phrases as long as the phrase that I just played. So if I play ba-ba-doo-dot, da-ga-doo-dot, da-bo, da-go, da-boo-ba-doo-ba-da-ba-doo-ba-doo-dot,
so
ba-da-da-dot, ba-da-da, ba-da, however long my played phrase is, my silent phrase has to be as long.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but they can be any length, even from the beginning, in terms of the phrase.
It can be long, they can be short, but if you play a long phrase, you have to put in a period of silence that's about equally as long.
Yeah.
You want to try it?
Yep.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. That game, if you try, you want to give it a shot?
Yeah.
Give it a go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. Hear him singing it. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of restrictive practice, just hearing yourself do that, it reminds us and it puts in our mind's ear what it sounds like to have some space when we play phrases. And then you can just practice playing space. So considering space part of our musical statement, right? And what might that sound like? So this is an artistic choice now. This could be like, I'm going to leave a long Miles Davis-y length period of space as a choice, you know?
Well, one thing I just want to note about that I noticed that I think would be helpful for folks, as you're doing the exercise we just did, the negative space cancellation exercise.
Yeah.
I noticed what you did. I think this is important. If you play a phrase that's, say, like a 3-beat kind of phrase, so if it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, baby doo bop, so that's baby doo bop. The tendency would be ski-ba doo dop, ski-ba doo ba da ba, which is
on the
fine.
Same beat. Yeah.
There's what I noticed you did. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're practicing this and you're like, I got it, always be thinking of little ways to kind of go next level, to challenge yourself. And I noticed what you did was on a 3-note phrase. You were like, be-de-doo-doo, ski-dee-dop.
Yeah.
So, like, you started right on the next beat. So that's a good way to get out of that cookie cutter, like because sometimes we'll be like, okay, I'm not going to do a 2-bar phrase like the first example. I'm not going to just do a 2-bar phrase. But then sometimes people keep doing a 2-bar phrase. They just play for 6 beats and then wait out the next. Like, they start to segment everything in how the bars look on the page. And I think that if you listen to great improvisers, they rarely do that because they rarely practice like
That's
that.
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just something to be aware of.
Let's go back to No Greater Love.
Was that today we did that? Yeah. I think so.
Let's go out on that and let's practice. This is another great way to practice space. Imagine that you're giving a speech. Imagine, some of your favorite speakers, Martin Luther King, amazing public speaker.
I was taught when I was giving a speech to imagine the entire audience in underwear. Is that what we're doing?
You could do that, and that might help your playing. But for adding space, imagine that you're giving a monologue or a speech, that you're, a public speaker or an actor, and you are speaking for a very long time, just you. And you're not going to be speaking like this just without taking a breath, without taking a pause for effect and for just physical reasons, because you do have to breathe when you speak, right? So as pianists, we get into the typewriter mode, and that's a killer.
Zombie typewriter.
A way to think about this is as a monologue, and like you're giving a speech, and you're using that, as you would see a great speaker pause for effect, you can do that as you play. So let's practice that.
Cool.
I'll go first, and then you got it.
Okay.
Changes to No Greater Love?
I'll give you a bass line.
Yeah.
One.
Oh,
you got it.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.